I know this may surprise you, but if somebody has some awakening by themselves, but they only understand it by themselves, it cannot really help them. It can only help them when they have it confirmed by a teacher, and they can share it with others at that point. But if they don't have it confirmed, and they just keep it for themselves, actually it can become a hindrance. And Wineng was open enough. He understood that he needed to see a teacher. He needed to talk to the master who was the teacher of this monk who was reciting the Diamond Sutra. And at that point he asked, where is this master? How can I go see him? And then he arranged for somebody to take care of his mother. He arranged for somebody to help his mother. I'm not sure. It's very remarkable the way all the causes came together. The cause and the condition came together is very remarkable. He's very young, he's very poor. He doesn't have education. But he heard a few words of the Diamond Sutra, boom! He had some experience. It's like, where did that come from? It's amazing, actually. Where did that come from? And he knew that he had to visit the patriarch who lived on the mountain far away. And he knew that he had to find somebody to take care of his mother. So he said that he borrowed or somehow arranged for his mother to be taken care of. He arranged for somebody to help his mother, and he got permission to leave, and he traveled, he walked to the north. He was living in the area, the region of Canton, Kwangtung, now known in Korean as Gwangju. Actually, I think in English or Chinese, they say Guangzhou. You know, it's southern China. But he had to go north to get to find this fifth patriarch. And so he traveled for some distance, and when he arrived at the temple of the fifth patriarch looked at him. First he said, I am a commoner. I am uneducated. I'm coming from Kwangtung. I have traveled far to pay you respect. And I ask for nothing but Buddhahood. And the fifth patriarch looked at him and he said, you are a native of Kwangtung? You are from Guangzhou? You're a barbarian. How can you expect to be a Buddha? He's a very stern with him. He's a very stern. And he said, you're barbarian. You are uncultured. How can you expect to be Buddha? Then the young man who would become the Wineng, he said, although there are northern men and southern men, north and south make no difference in Buddha nature. A barbarian is different from your holiness physically, but there is no difference in our Buddha nature. Wow, that's a remarkable speech. How could he say that? You can imagine, he's in front of a much older person. The monk is very stern, looking at him, you barbarian. It would have been much simpler to say, oh, I am barbarian, you're right, I am pitiful. But he didn't say that. And most people, if they were in this situation, they probably would wilt. They probably would like, But no, he said, human beings have north and south. But in Buddha nature, there's no north and south. And north and south make no difference in the Buddha nature. And he even challenged the patriarch. Barbarian is different from your holiness physically, but there is no difference in our Buddha nature. So where did this speech come from? It's really incredible, isn't it? That he could reply like this. Now we say maybe in his past life, he was already practicing, and he probably already was realized bodhisattva in his past life. This is the one way we can explain it. But this is, of course, only explaining it. We don't really know how that happened. But it's a very amazing thing. All of you, especially you Korean people, you know when you're in front of the older person and the person talks to you strictly. Where you come from? You barbarian, you come from What? You come from over there in Cholado? What kind of barbarian are you? Then usually people that cannot answer, or you come from Gyeongsando, you uncultured person, it's very difficult to answer. Or, maybe somebody looks at you, oh, you come from Europe. How can you understand Buddhism? How can you become Buddha if you came from Europe or you came from America? You're barbarian. When I first came to Korea, some people looked at me and they said, oh, you're born in America, and American people, they're very materialistic. How can you practice that? You're so materialistic society, You cannot practice the sun. And so, like that, he was able to respond so smoothly. We say that already he had some awakening. He had some experience. And then he said to the, later he said, the fifth patriarch, he looked at him and he said to him, go over there and join the people who are working. He said to him, you go over there and you do some work. And then he said, wisdom often arises in my mind. If you don't go astray from your essence of mind, one may be called the field of merits. I do not know what work your holiness would ask me to do. He's saying, what kind of work can I do? Already, if I stay with my true self, I'm doing the best work that there is. And so, but the patriarch looked at him and said, this barbarian is too bright. He said, you're too clever. Go off to work. Well, why did he say that? Why did the fifth patriarch, why did he tell him to go over to the backyard and to split firewood and to pound the rice? Now, of course, some people think that, because he was telling him to do some kind of working meditation. But that's not the case, actually. He told him to go over there because he wanted to protect him, because other people were jealous of him. Other people saw that he was of unusual capacity, and they are jealous of him. So he said, you barbarian, you go over there, you do some work. He's actually protecting him that way. So it's said that after that, the Huineng was just working in the temple of the fifth patriarch, pounding the rice and chopping the firewood. And you can see, many times you can see the picture, the painting on a temple wall of Huineng pounding the rice. And it's very common in the temple to see some kind of a wall painting of Huineng pounding the rice. And it's said for 8 months he's just doing this kind of work. And one day, he said the patriarch, the fifth patriarch, saw him one day and said, and talked to him. He said, I know your knowledge of Buddhism. I know your knowledge of Buddhism is very sound, but I have to refrain from speaking to you, lest evildoers should do you harm. Do you understand? And he said, yes, sir, I do. And to avoid people taking notice of me, I dare not go near your hall. That time there were many monks, many people studying with the fifth patriarch. And he dared not go near the place where the fifth patriarch resided, even though he wished to talk to him, but he dared not go because they would be jealous of him and they may do him harm. So then it's said that the patriarch one day assembled all his disciples and said to them, the question of incessant rebirth is a momentous one. He said, the matter of life and death is very great matter, and things are changing very fast. And what this actually means is he's getting older. He's not so young anymore, okay? It means, the deeper meaning of that is he's getting older, the fifth patriarch. So he said, day after day, instead of trying to free yourselves from the bitter sea of life and death, you seem to go after tainted merits only, merits that cause rebirth. So rather than trying to free yourself from life and death, you're chasing after merits. In Buddhism, we often talk about merits, the merit of sharing, the merits of giving, the merits of taking precepts, the merits of doing this and that. But he said, tainted merits, merits that only cause you to be reborn. These merits will be of no help if your essence of mind is obscured. If you don't know the essence of your mind, even though you may do many good things, you may do many meritorious things, you're not going to be free from life and death. Then, go and seek for prajna in your own mind and write me a stanza, a poem, a gatha. Write me a poem about it. They say gatha, but actually we say in English poem. He who understands what the essence of mind is will be given the robe, the kasha, the kasa. When he says robe, it means the kasa. And the Dharma, and I shall make him the sixth patriarch. Go away quickly. Delay not in writing this stanza, as deliberation is quite unnecessary and of no use. The man who has realized the essence of mind can speak of it at once, as soon as he is spoken to about it, and he cannot lose sight of it, even when engaged in battle. Wow, that's quite a statement. He's saying, if you get this essence of mind, essence, which is the true nature, even you are engaged in a battle, even you are fighting with somebody like on a battlefield, you won't lose it if you really attain it. And after they received this instruction, the disciples withdrew and said to one another, well, it's of no use for us to concentrate our mind to write the stanza and submit it to His Holiness, since the patriarchate is bound to be won by Shen Shu, our instructor. That time Shen Shu was the head monk in the temple. He was in Korea we say the Ipsung Sunim, or the most senior instructor of the monks. And all the monks that time, they said, there's no use. Why should we get a headache? Try to write a poem. We know that the head monk is the most advanced. Let's just see. He will probably win this, and he will probably get this. And if we just write something perfunctorily, if we just write something and it's not so good, it just will be a waste of energy. And upon hearing this, all that made up their minds not to write. They all decided not to write. This means they don't have confidence. They didn't really attain the essence of mind. They didn't really attain their true nature. So they decided not to write about it, and they decided that we will just, why should we take the trouble? They said, why should we take the trouble? Hereafter, we will simply follow our instructor, Shen Su, wherever he goes, and look to him for guidance. Of course, this was very convenient for them to decide that Shen Su would be the sixth patriarch, and they just automatically decided not to write their poem. Well, the problem was, though, that Shen Su was also not so confident. And he reasoned with himself, considering that I am their teacher, none of them will take part in the competition. I wonder whether I should write a stanza, a poem, and submit it to His Holiness. If I do not, how can the patriarch know how deep or superficial my knowledge is? If my object is to get the Dharma, my motive is a pure one. If I were after the patriarchate, then it would be bad. In that case, my mind would be that of a worldling, and my action would amount to robbing the patriarch's holy seat. But if I do not submit the stanza, I shall never have a chance of getting the Dharma. A very difficult point to decide indeed. So this is interesting. His thinking was like, if I write the poem and it's not so good, it's not pure, my motive is not pure, people will say I'm just trying to steal. the patriarch's seat. But if I don't write the poem, I won't have a chance to know whether I really got the Dharma. So he got caught in this dilemma. It's a really kind of like a catch-22, we say in English, catch-22. If he writes the poem, he looks like he's a very ambitious, bad guy. But if he doesn't write the poem, he never knows whether he attained the Dharma. So kind of like he got caught on this question. So at that point, there was, in the front of the Patriarch Hall, there were 3 corridors. And these corridors, the walls were empty. They were white, just like the wall here. They're white and blank. And these walls were to be painted later with pictures from the Lankavatara Sutra. And they weren't painted yet, so these walls were kind of blank. Like this wall over here, except they have a clock. They did not have clocks in those days. It's just a blank wall. And the Shensu, he wrote his poem. But after he wrote his poem, he doesn't have much confidence in it. He really feels nervous about this poem. Shall I give it to Patriarch or not? And he's sweating. Oh, this is very difficult. Oh, he's sweating. And he's very nervous. And he walked to the Patriarch's, almost to his hall. Then he turned around, walked back to his room, and walked there, and turn around, go back and forth. He's really nervous. He's really sweating. And in 4 days, he said that he made altogether 13 attempts to give the poem that he wrote to the 5th Patriarch. But he doesn't have the courage to do it. He cannot do it. He lacks the courage to give it. So finally, he has a good idea. He thought to himself, he thought, it would be much better for me to write it on the wall, on the blank wall of the corridor, and let the Patriarch see it for himself. If he approves it, I shall come out and respect and say, that's my poem. But if he doesn't approve it, then I have wasted many years practicing here, and in that case, I will be very ashamed. So I just have to quickly leave. So he had the plan. He write his poem on the wall, but he not say it's his poem. He just watch from a distance, and if his teacher approve, then he said, yeah, that's my poem. But not approved, then he just quietly disappear. It's like kind of like a student in a high school or something. It's very funny. And at 12 o'clock that night, at midnight, he went secretly with a lamp to write the poem on the wall of the south corridor so that the Patriarch might know what spiritual insight he had attained. And then he wrote his poem, our body is the Bodhi tree, and our mind is a bright mirror. Carefully we wipe them hour by hour, and let no dust alight. So he went at midnight. Nobody's around at midnight. Those of you who have lived in, like myself, lived in the Buddhist temple know at midnight is usually the time everybody is asleep, because we wake up very early in the morning. So midnight everybody sleeps, but he goes at midnight. He writes it on the wall. And as soon as he had written it, he left right away and went to his room. And he stayed in his room. So nobody knew that he wrote that. And then in his room, he thought to himself, when the Patriarch sees my poem tomorrow, and he's pleased with it, I shall be ready for the Dharma. But if he says that it is badly done, then I know that I am unfit for the Dharma, owing to my bad karma from previous lives that thickly beclouded my mind. It is difficult to know what the Patriarch will say about it. And he kept on thinking and thinking until dawn. He could not sleep. He could not even sit. He could not be at ease. he could not sit still. He could not sleep, thinking about what's he going to say. Will he approve my poem? Will he not? But the fifth patriarch, he knew already that Shen Su had not entered the door of enlightenment, and he knew that he did not know the essence of mind. And the next morning, he was walking in the temple, and by chance, he saw the poem on the wall, just by chance. And then he did something interesting. He said, let's not paint the wall now. It's better we not paint this wall now. Let's leave this poem here so that people can study this poem and they can recite it. And if they put its teaching into actual practice, they will be saved from the misery of being born in the three evil realms of existence. And the merit gained by one who practices it, it will be great indeed. And he ordered incense to be burned and all his disciples to pay homage to this poem, to bow in front of this poem and recite it so that they might realize the essence of mind. And after they had recited it, all of them exclaimed, "Well done." And so it's very interesting. The fifth patriarch, even though he knew that his student, this Shen Su, had not really attained the essence of mind, he publicly did not say that. He's very diplomatic. He said, "Oh, it's good poem. It will save you from going to evil places. It will save you from going to hell." So they burn incense there and pay their respect to it and recite it. And he's very diplomatic. He's very wise. He knew that if he says something bad about it, the head monk would leave the temple suddenly, and everybody would have a problem. So he's very diplomatic. And then he ordered the Shen Su, the head monk, to come to the hall, and he ordered him to come to the hall at midnight, not during the day, at the middle of night, 12 o'clock. And he asked him, "Did you write this? Did you write this poem?" And he said, "Yes, I wrote this poem. I dare not to be so vain as to expect to get the patriarchate, but I wish your holiness would please tell me, kindly tell me, does my poem show the least grain of wisdom?" So actually he was very good. He's very honest. He said, "I don't want to be the kind of bad person to steal the patriarch, but please tell me, does my poem have wisdom?" And the patriarch said to him very directly, he said, "Your poem shows you have not yet realized the essence of mind. So far you have reached the door of enlightenment, but you haven't entered it. To seek for supreme enlightenment with such an understanding as yours can hardly be successful." And then he continues I won't read everything he said, but he continued to tell him that one must be able to know spontaneously one's own nature or essence of mind, which is neither created nor annihilated. And he went on to tell him about the essence of mind. And he said, "You had better go back and think it over again for a couple of days, and then give me another stanza, another poem. If your poem shows that you have entered the door of enlightenment, I will transmit to you the robe and the Dharma." So after this, the Shen Su was quite upset, actually. He was really upset by his failure, and he tried for several days to write another poem. But it really upset his mind even more. And he's really upset, so he was like sick. He's ill, and he's sick, and he's like he was in a nightmare, and he could not find comfort in sitting nor in walking. He's very uncomfortable because of that. And so he's wow, he's like really upset by this failure. So after that, what happened is that the Weineng, the young man, he is not yet even the monk actually. He's working like a hengja in the. He's working just a working person. He's working pounding the rice, and he was pounding the rice. And while he was pounding the rice, he heard the poem that was being recited, the poem that was written by Shensu. And as soon as he heard it, he knew at once that the composer of it had not yet realized the essence of mind. And although he had not yet really been taught about it, he already had a good idea of it. And at that point, he got the idea that he too would write his own poem. And he asked somebody to help him write the poem on the wall that he had already composed. He was composing in his mind. But the person that he asked a monk, a young boy, he said, "You barbarian, how can you write the poem? You don't even know the Chinese character. How can you write the poem? You are uneducated." And later, at that point, the Weineng was able to give his poem, and the boy who was there, the young monk who was there, he was able to take it down and write it for him. And he said, "I will take it down for you, but don't forget that you should deliver me, that if you should succeed in getting the Dharma, don't forget to deliver me." So you can see there was quite a lot of, they all were quite competitive, and they all are quite ambitious. And so it was not such a simple thing for him to give his poem. And at this point, I will stop today. Does anybody have any question about this material?